Well, thank you for sticking it out. It's 3:30 on the second day. I know everyone's a little tired. We're only a few hours until we get to all celebrate tonight. So my name's Nicole Moreo. I'm a vice president at Ketchum. I'm also the North American chapter lead for AMEC. Very excited for today's panel, the digital revolution. We've heard a lot today. We've heard AI. There was a session right before about analytics. We've been hearing all about tearing down silos. So I think this is a great way to have a conversation and really continue the great work that's been going. So I've asked them to try to stick to 5 minutes each. We'll see how that goes. But I would really like to have conversation at the end. So please be taking notes, ask questions at the end, call them out on anything that you might want. But it's really to have a great dialogue. Nope.
Yeah, it's.
Ignore everything you just saw. Okay. So we have a great panel here. So we have Paul, head of Insight at EMIA for Cision. He's also on the AMEC board. Some of you probably heard him earlier today with the launch of the new maturity map. We have Steffen. I'm not going to go for the last name. By founding partner and CEO of MediaTrack, digitization of newspapers and coding, and he's based in Singapore. We have Darryl, so that's the UK development director at Hotwire, so that's a global communications firm with a focus in tech and innovation. Also very relevant for this, he has a background with digital marketing agency with insight into SEO and PPC. And then we have Jan, so he's head of analysis and consulting at Argus Data, based in Germany. He also previously held the position of head of digital media. So we have a really great panel here, and excited for today. So to kick us off, this was recently done, 2018. The world's internet users passed the 4 billion mark. So when we're thinking about digital, a few years ago, I remember at one of the conferences, someone said we have to stop saying digital is social. I think we all are okay with that now. We're moving beyond that. But we have well over half of the world's population is now online. That means every touch point they have, on a way with your brand, that's going to be digital. That's a way of interacting, whether it's mobile, whether it's your desktop. They have a way to interact with you there. Nearly 250 million new users came online for the first time in 2017. So thinking about our global market, this is a global summit, more and more people are getting there than ever before. And interestingly, Africa has seen the fastest growth rates. So again, you're thinking globally, you're thinking about all the ways people can find you. This is making a huge impact. Since 2000, time spent online every week by an average American has risen from 9.4 hours to 23.6. More ways they can find you, whether they're just surfing, whether they're Googling, whether they're doing a little online stalking. I think everyone has heard that. But again, more than ever, they're spending more time, more ways for them to interact with you. 90% of the digital data ever created in the world has been generated in just the past 2 years, and only 1% of that data has actually been analyzed. So something to think about here, and maybe to help get us a little awake. I was at a conference a few years ago, and he started off saying, I was really hungry for meatloaf. So I went looking for meatloaf. I was going to go to a restaurant. So I went to Yelp. Looking at the restaurant, it had something on it that he knew his wife was going to hate. So he Yelped another restaurant for meatloaf. Found that, went to their website, hated the look of it, realized maybe this was too difficult. So he's going to cook meatloaf. So he started looking at recipes for meatloaf. Then he finds out you need a big pan, which he doesn't have. It's going to take hours. That's not going to happen. But he wants to do it in the future, so he downloads a recipe. And all of a sudden, as he gets the recipe in the pan, an ad pops up for a meatloaf concert. So he buys the meatloaf concert tickets. Then, at the end of the day, it also then popped up. The restaurant popped back up again. He's like, you know what, let's go anyways, but they didn't get meatloaf. And at the end, he goes, now funnel that. So we talk about this, the journey and funneling. Digital, there's now ways to find it that it's really difficult to know exactly when they're going to come up. And I always remember that funnel that story when he ended with a picture of the food meatloaf and obviously the singer, the musician, meatloaf on the other side. And it really kind of brought into context, this is a new kind of digital landscape, and how is that going to affect everything we do? In the communications world, we're really we're supposed to make sure our audiences are hit with the right message at the right time on the right platform. And with that type of funnel, that's going to become more difficult to navigate, to analyze than ever before. So making sure that we are not avoiding digital or thinking that it's a different silo, we've heard today, it's really important to bring all different data sets together to make sure you're telling the story. So these stats are kind of highlighting that. The IDC predicted that the digital universe will reach 180 zettabytes in 2025. It's at 40 about now, 40 zettabytes. So that's massive growth. So how does this impact me? Only 8% of companies surveyed recently said their current business model would remain economically viable if their industry keeps digitizing at its current course and speed. So how many people have heard one of those stats I've already put up there before? Okay. Well then, most people have heard them or they've read about it somewhere, but then they actually don't know what to do with it. Enter our panel for today. So hopefully they're gonna tell some stories about their current business. They're gonna give you a little insight just for 5 minutes to get us all thinking, and then I'd really like to open up the floor to questions. So with that, Paul.
Hi. So I want to pick up on some of the things that Nicole's just put there and actually bring together some of the themes that have come through the 2 days that we've had so far. And actually, if I go back a year, so the last year's summit was in Bangkok, and there was some downtime on the Thursday before the awards. Or actually, the awards were on Wednesday, but I had some downtime on the Thursday. So exactly this time last year. And so I went on the treadmill and I listened to, I had a load of podcasts I was listening to, and the podcast I was listening to was the media show from the BBC. And there was Professor Emily Bell, who's the professor at New York Columbia University, former digital editor of The Guardian. She knows her onions. She said, the media has changed more in the last 5 years than the previous 500. I thought, whoa, that's quite a big statement. 500 years. And if you think about 500 years, what happened 500 years ago? Well, it was the invention of the printing press. So new technology comes in and disrupts everything. It disrupts not only media, but it disrupts how societies work, how politics works. It led to the Reformation. It led to huge changes, loads of political and religious wars. And we fast forward to today, and we're seeing exactly the same thing happening. We're seeing a new media reformation, if you like. We're seeing the rise of digital media really disrupting things from Trump to Brexit to polarizations in terms of how we see the world. We've seen independence in Catalonia. We've seen the rise of the five-star movement in Italy. It's causing big change. And just to kind of illustrate this point, AMEC was founded in 1996. This was the world in 1996. These were the biggest companies on the planet. They were energy companies and infrastructure companies and 100-year-old drinks brands. And fast forward to today, and what are they all? They're all tech companies and data companies. And actually, I'd argue some of these are media companies. And of course, they'd argue they aren't. But if you're Google and you're Facebook and you're hoovering up 85% of all new ad revenue, you're reaching billions of people and you control the content that they're seeing, well, that's a pretty strong definition of a media company. And this is actually all out of date. This slide is a month old. The market cap is flying ahead. The market cap for Apple is heading towards $1 trillion. It's going to be the first business, or likely to be the first business that hits $1 trillion. These 5 organizations represent a quarter of the value on the S&P 500. So all of this value is tied up in data, right? Well, that might be the wrong way of looking at it, because actually, as Nicole has pointed out, data is not rare. There's a lot of it. What was the stat? 40 zettabytes?
Well, yeah,
in this year.
Currently.
This year, 40 zettabytes. That's 10 with 21 zeros after it. Now, we can't contemplate what that is. So to borrow from Carl Sagan, that is the equivalent of every grain of sand on the entire planet, including all of the deserts, all of the beaches, and all of the stars in the universe added together. Right? There's a lot of data. Data's not the problem. There's huge amounts of it. What is rare is time, us. The constraining factor is that we're all consumers and we have a 24-hour time span every day, and you can't exceed that. So what is happening is these businesses are actually competing to using data to get your attention. And if you think about the stat about the amount of time people are spending online, Facebook's entire algorithm is basically trying to get you to stay on it. And if I look at my wife all the time going like this, thinking, how much time are you going to spend on Facebook? So it really should be not the data economy, but the attention economy. And that's really profound if you think about how this affects media and communications professionals working in the media. Because if time is poor, or people are time poor, then what communicators have to do, they're working for brands that are competing with each other to get that attention. So it's not really about getting content out there, it's about understanding audiences, and it's about understanding what audiences are likely to respond to, what messages are going to resonate with those audiences, building engagement, and then trying to understand behavior. And that's difficult. And in a complicated media landscape, that needs data and information to do that. The other thing is that communicators themselves are time poor. And that's really important because they have access to huge amounts of data as well. And if you're time poor and, say, a head of comms, you need someone to tell you what is important. With all of this stuff out there, how do I know what I should prioritize? What should I focus on? How do I make the biggest impact? As Alex Aitken said yesterday, it's not a case of sending out stuff. It's about learning what is effective. Let me give you 3 examples of what I see from my position within Cision. So this is kind of a Cision-tinted view of the world, but I think it is indicative of what's going on. So the first thing is the rise of automation and insight. So with all of this content out there, and we heard this at the AI talk this morning, all of this content, what you can't do is spend huge amounts of time sifting through that content. And so the traditional media analysis model was you'd pay coders to sit there and code every article. Now, more and more content means that becomes cost prohibitive, but it also becomes time prohibitive. Because in a 24/7 media landscape, you can't wait for that data to be turned around. So you need automation to be able to do that heavy lifting. And we've seen, and I'm not going to go into all of the detail for time reasons, all of the applications of automation and machine learning, from automated sentiment through to topic discovery, through to understanding influencers, through to understanding digital journeys. But it's becoming increasingly important. And everyone has shiny portals. This is Cision Communications Cloud, which was launched last year. And don't want to go too much on about Cision Communications Cloud, but it's indicative of the fact that investment is going into not only data processing, but data presentation as well. We saw some great visualizations yesterday. Incidentally, I mean, within Cision, there are several Scrum teams, and every 2 weeks, Jamin mentioned the idea of a Scrum. You just get down and you produce stuff, and you do it quickly. Every 2 weeks, there's new functionality that's coming out because there are these rapid changes. But I think there's a really important point here, which I want to reinforce from this morning's AI talk, which robots aren't going to take over our jobs. Because AI needs people. I think AI needs people in 3 ways. The first is that it's actually not good enough in several domains at the moment to be able to accurately do things like coding for sentiment in certain areas, checking for nuanced messages. So you need humans to do that data checking. It's really important. So one of the things I always advise is you should use humans to really focus in on priority content, the channels that really matter most for your audiences. And that's almost, if you think about it, that's smart data on top of big data. The other thing you need humans for is that computers aren't actually they're not actually very clever. And so the way machine learning works is that you need a training set. You need humans to code content, and for that to then train the model that you then use to then do the automated stuff over, and actually need to refine it over time. So you need humans to work with computers to help actually create that sense of automation. And the third, and I think this is the most important of all, is you need humans to make sense of what the outputs of that data, to then create a level of insight, to interpret what works, what doesn't work, and then help use that in partnership with clients, with communicators, to understand how people can improve their communications over time. Paloma was talking about the evaluation council, where you get together a group of expert people to interpret the data and really understand how to improve the communications activity on a global level. And I think that's actually a really important point as well, because digitization, as Jamin mentioned Jamin from Microsoft in his talk, was that digital media does not recognize national boundaries. And this is actually having huge repercussions in terms of how the whole PR world works. Because if you have content that's, say, in English, well, that's going to be equally effective in any country that has a predominantly English-speaking language, and in any country that has even a reasonable proportion of English speakers. So language is more of a barrier than national boundaries. And this is really important because, and you heard from Jamin from Microsoft, Jen from Adobe, Paloma from UNICEF, all of these organizations used to have very siloed national PR teams. And you can't do this anymore because news travels far and it travels fast. So you have to coordinate activity, and you have to understand where audiences are getting their information from, because it can spread across borders. And that not only is that profound for in-house communications team, it's profound for the measurement industry as well. And so Cision, part of the whole rationale for Cision's, and you might have noticed Cision's been buying some companies, most of the acquisitions, so there's two rationales for it. One is to buy a business that gives you a point solution that you can then integrate into an integrated set of services. So PR Newswire is a good example. Does media distribution, content distribution. So it adds that as an extra part, an extra channel, if you like, of activity. But it also gives us 40 international offices. I come from the Gorkana business, which is based in the UK. So the acquisition of Gorkana got a presence in the UK. The acquisition of Prime, presence in Germany and the US. Acquisition of Argos de la Presse, presence in France. And so what that means is you are able to help these global programs at scale, but also, and Paloma mentioned the glocal point, there's still local nuance. You still need to be able to translate that into local activity, even though you're doing that global coordination. And I think the third thing, I've talked about integration geographically, but there's also integration around data sets and across media channels. So my boss's boss, Abe Smith, talked yesterday about how Cision are approaching it. And I think Abe mentioned that he was from Oracle. And if you look at the senior management team of Cision, so Abe is from Oracle. He's the EMIA president. The CEO, Kevin, is from Oracle. The CMO is from Oracle. The CTO is from Adobe. So these are all big tech execs. And they are all coming with a mindset of, we understand how the disruption that's happened to the advertising industry with big ad tech. And Oracle and Adobe actually run a lot of the back-end infrastructure that runs the Google and Facebook ad tech infrastructure. And we can learn a lot from how these other marketing channels are working. If you think about the reason Google and Facebook are hoovering up 85% of all of this additional ad revenue is because they are able to say, this is the audience. If you want to target an audience, we can tell you how to target an audience. Not only that, but we can then tell you whether you've got in front of that audience, and we can actually tell you whether that audience has then gone and done what you want them to do as a result. And we can leverage some of that technology. It already exists. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So he mentioned Cision Impact. And all this is doing is using the existing ad tech infrastructure to enable you to identify. If I've clicked on an online article, and I click on the yes, I accept cookies, which we all do, or most of us do, you then are tracked as an individual. We can then identify not only how many people will read an article, we can then say, well, who are you? What are your audience demographics? If it's a B2B, what type of organization do you work for? What's the engagement with that article there and then? But the really important thing is, let's say you've read that article, and then you've gone away and you've lived your life, and then 2 weeks later you've gone on to, as Abe mentioned, the Nike website, and you choose those, I'm not going to say sneakers, those pair of trainers. You can then track that journey. And that's really powerful, because then you've got that information that really shows the journey of a customer online from the activity that we've done all the way through to the business impact. And that allows us, and just in conclusion, I think one of the advantages that we've got, so yes, digital is causing disruption. It's causing disruption to the media, it's causing disruption to PR, and it's causing disruption to the measurement industry that supports it. But it gives us huge opportunities. Because it gives us all of this information that actually helps us to finally identify whether communications and public relations, which for so long has been this intangible thing, well, I think it works, but I can't really prove it, to actually have that digital footprint to be able to show how effective it is. And by using meaningful measurement, I'm hoping that means that earned media will earn its place, its rightful place within the marketing mix. Thank you very much.
I would also say Paul went 10 minutes instead of 5, but can we make sure the timer is up?
Yeah, that would be
Thank
great.
you.
So,
Hi. Great stuff.
from me as well. If you check your schedule, you might recognize that I'm a really short-term jump-in replacement here instead of my boss, Andreas Westermann, who should be sitting here. Actually, I'm so short-term jump-in that the slides that are shown here are not my own, that they are the ones made by Andreas. And yesterday evening, I recognized I'm not so good in presenting slides I didn't made for myself. So what to do and how to make it a bit more lively for you. And what I decided in the end was just, I go for something else. I will present you the slides in the end, but I would just present you a short story about a phenomenon that I recognize in our company, how we cope with digitalization and what happens and how it disrupts our company. Maybe it's a bit more authentic than just presenting slides not made up by myself. So what I want to do is to get into a phenomenon I would like to call the end of the era of the generalists. What we expect now at our point is that the project types, the project setup were totally different from back then. And what I mean is about 5 or 6 years ago, when I first came into touch with the business, the project setups were quite narrow. So the first part, the projects had data collection, data gathering, evaluation, were based on quite basic statistic models. And the end of the project usually saw basic reports, right? Like just highlighting some numbers, making up the basic figures, and giving some examples of peaks. And this has drastically changed. So what we now have, and I think that's something that came up earlier, at least was Paul said it, the data we have at the beginning is totally different. It's not only that there's much more data out there, but the data now comes in interrelated forms. We have data that's not unstructured at the beginning, but there are many, many relationships between different data sets that you have, and you have to keep them on when you do further coding and further evaluation of this data. So when we now do data evaluation, the mathematical toolkit that we use is much broader than before. It was based on statistic models. When we now talk about data modeling, usually the basic mathematical toolkit is that of algebraic geometry and not longer that of statistics. So you need really people who are somehow in depth into vector spaces and things like that. But I think at least as important is the change at the other end. And this is where the project ends. And it's that the digitalization had as well widened the possibilities for our clients where they can use the insights we provide them with. It's not only that in the end they can say, what is the ROI of my communication measure, but the data we provide can be used in many, many strategic planning processes and is used so. It can be used when you just try, which topic shall I jump onto with my communication tomorrow? How shall I manage my portfolio? Which products to integrate and which not. It's supply chain management. There's so many things the digitalization has provided us data which we can give to our clients and help them. And they don't want only the data from us. They want to know where this data belongs in the process of their workflows, of their planning processes, and to help them get this planning along. So I think this has drastically and dramatically changed. So what we had back then, there was one single person who was conducting and holistically all the projects for our clients, from the beginning on, from data collection till the reporting at the end. And now we see that we can provide much better results for the clients when we just split it off, when we don't have this one person who just develops a project from beginning to end, but we have specialists for the things. We have specialists for the mathematical tools. We have specialists for strategic planning, and now we're just planning to have specialists for bringing it to the creative side, for just what to do with the content we put out. And bringing all these people together has proven to have much better results than just having one person who somehow has the looks and knows what the client wants, but has not the specific knowledge that at this moment of time is absolutely necessary to gain the best possible results for our clients. I myself have to confess that I stuck for quite a while to this idea that it's better to have one person who has the whole project in his hands. But in the last year, that's something that really brought the amounts of digital data and digital communication possibilities for us, is to say we need teams with specialists, and they have an important part to play in all these products. So that's somehow a story not from the outside, not from the data, but a story from the inside, how digitalization changed our processes and our workflows. Of course, we can later on talk about the outside stuff, but that's a story from our company. So just the shortest possible glimpse through the slides. Okay, it's not really in, but it's all fine. That's something everybody knows, and I think many people agree on that. Really, it's important. There's much more data out there, much more KPIs and markets. It's important not just to provide numbers, but create a basis for better decisions out there. That's what we have to do, and not just send out numbers or reports. As well, it's not only that we have to widen our perspective to the PISO model. That's what many people say. We have to take all these further channels into view. What is important is to the interaction and the spillover effects between these different channels. That how content published and earned spills over into paid, back into shared and stuff. I think the interrelation between the different channels, that's really important. And I hope that is what Andreas wanted to tell you with this slide. Then of course, it's something that has to evolve, and I think we're not finally done with it. It's important that it's not, here we have an evaluation grid for social, there for TV, that for broadcast, but one overall KPI grid that we can all measure all the different media types and channels in and say, we've spent this much on Facebook and this much on television and broadcast, what worked better off? So cross-media evaluation grid is something that's really important. And last but not least, it's really, really good to help your customers not say what worked and did not work yesterday, but try to help them and make their work tomorrow better. So trying to go with predictive, not forecasting, not just having one variable change the value, but try to be as open as you could and modeling as many variables in an open grid and not working ceteris paribus, wherever possible, trying to get predictive analytics on its way. That's it from me.
Okay. Working? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, I'm from Singapore. And, I read in Singapore Straits Times this morning that the Singapore government had spent $20 million on the Kim-Trump summit that was just held a couple of days ago. And an agency from our organization was then quoted in the Straits Times to say that that's peanuts because the AVE that Singapore got out of it was $700 million. So Barry, if you're here, there's still a bit of work to do for us also in that region. Okay, that was a little side comment. I'm going to jump into what it is that we are actually doing, what it is that we are providing our clients, our end clients, and which is to basically find the right information to the right people at the right time and try to explain it, make sense of it, get our clients to understand it, God bless them. And that's what we're being paid to do, basically. And how do we do that? So we cast a wide net where we collect data, then we filter it, and we filter it some more. We use different techniques. We use Boolean searches. We use, perhaps some of us use AI technology. Some of us use human resources to select articles that are relevant for our clients. And then finally, we'll present a result to them. So I just want to share with you a small test that we did, because I find that, over the past couple of days, I've heard a lot of all of these buzzwords like AI and NLP and machine learning and what have you. And our approach is that we should be able to walk before we can run. We don't think that there's a single bullet that can kill it all and is able to extract exactly the right content for our clients with one simple solution. We think it's a mix of many different solutions. So the first thing is to make sure that your data is structured and that your data is uniform, so that you are able to search across all the different platforms that you have. Now, I know it's slightly different to search in a radio broadcast than it is to search in a print newspaper. But anyway, it's possible to uniform the data as much as possible. Once that is done, then we can start to filter, as I was talking about before. And we did a small little test where we took sort of what I see as the first really concrete step in filtering. Or rather, actually, it's a second. Because after you have uniformed your data, you run a Boolean search. And then, after that, we try to use machine learning to select articles for clients. So we tried to make it really difficult. We picked out 22 of our most difficult clients. So these are clients like government organizations. One of them, as an example, was a Ministry of Tax, where they were interested in public debate around taxation on a national level, not on a municipality level. So it's quite difficult to filter out. And what we did was that we took these 22 different clients, then we took search results out. We asked analysts to go through them and either say this is relevant or this is not relevant on these different articles. And then we asked a piece of software to make sense from looking at the metadata on the articles. So, which keywords did it find? What type of source is it? How big was the article? How many times was the keyword mentioned? Blah, 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 blah. And based on that, the software was then able to find sort of a red thread in what the analysts were doing, and over time was able to pick up on what the analysts were doing and try to emulate the human brain, only by looking at metadata. So that's what we did. And then we placed sort of the articles, we gave them a scoring, so we placed them in, on one side, those that definitely are not relevant for the client, those are easy to pick up. And on the other side, those that definitely are relevant for the client, that they are also easy to pick up. And as you get closer to the center, it gets more and more difficult, of course, both for a human person as well as for the software to pick up on which articles are relevant or not. So then we came up with a scoring that would then place the articles along something that looked like this. And if I'm able to set it. So we set a confidence level at 95%, which is a little bit beyond what you would normally expect what a human person is able to do. So we set the bar quite high. And then we ran articles through and had a look at what was the result of it. So for some of the clients, these are the 22 clients, for some of the clients that did really poorly, only 20% of them we were able to predict the articles. So 80% we would still need a different technique to find the relevant articles. But on other of the clients, we're actually as high as 95% accuracy, which from looking only at metadata, I think it's a fantastic result. So next step after this is then to use NLP and start having software to actually read the articles. So a step-by-step approach, structure the data, run it through search, then use metadata, machine learning to read off the metadata, and then use NLP to find articles that are relevant. That's it for me.
Hi, I'm Darryl Sperry. I'm a Business Development Director for Hotwire in the UK. I'm nervous for two reasons. One, like Jan, I'm a very last-minute replacement for our Chief Development Officer, Andy West, who can't be here. And two, I gave my phone to someone in the audience, Mary Elizabeth, to take photos of me. Nothing will make you more nervous than giving a complete stranger potential access to your internet history. When I was writing this presentation very quickly earlier this week, I was talking about how the digital revolution, and Andy in his original slides had put the digital revolution is happening, and I kind of think it's a step beyond that actually, and I think the other speakers have really alighted on that. The digital revolution has happened, and it's happened on Facebook. It's happened on Google, it's happened on LinkedIn, it's happened on Twitter. So there's four things I'm going to talk you through very quickly today. So how social media listening tools and technologies are informing insights in ways that are really new and interesting and fast-moving. We have the ability to hyper-target our audiences using digital technologies now in ways that were unimaginable 10, 15 years ago. Communications agencies like Hotwire are increasingly able to use SEO-based reporting for PR, so we can justify back in terms of a real monetary value to some of the work we've done and the SEO impact of the work we've done. And how AI is becoming a viable part of the PR stack. I wish I'd bought shares in mentions of the word AI before I came to this conference. A lot of people have talked about that. So social technologies informing insights. So no one has to stand on a street corner with a clipboard anymore. You can actually sit at your desk and you can use tools like NetBase and Sysomos and Crimson Hexagon and tools like that to really understand what does an audience think about a particular subject. You can do qualitative research at quantitative scale, and you can get insights in a way that you never used to be able to. You can understand what an audience over or under indexes for. You can understand a whole range of stuff in ways you never had to. And you can use things like Google consumer surveys, which are cheap as chips, to be able to do really quick and really effective surveying of your potential target audiences and things like that. Hyper-targeting across platforms. I think this is something that PR professionals have in the past been a little sniffy about, and I think now really is the time for us to just embrace all of the opportunity that paid, whether that's paid social or pay-per-click on Google or the other options that exist, to just help us get content in front of the target audiences that we want to reach. Because if we've got great content, we're really not sweating that asset as hard as we can if we're not using all of the different tools across the pay-so model that are available to us to get that content in front of our target audiences. And the flip of all of that is you can hyper-target those audiences based on the things that they're interested in, who they follow, you know, a whole range of their age, their location, a whole range of different things, their job title. I won't try and keep coming up with things off the top of my head, but you will get the gist. So I think that is that's really important. And then obviously, if we're driving traffic to particular content on destination landing pages or on own channels, we can then demonstrate the ROI that that activity has had through trackable links and through CRM integration and things like that. So you can push leads directly into the CRM system and measure that. What's really important though, and I think Paul is a fantastic speaker, and he really had a lot to say. I think we can't just look at direct ROI and a link between pounds and PR activity as the only way of measuring PR activity, and that's definitely not what I'm advocating for here. I think it's one thing that we can definitely do, but there's lots of other things that PR people do all day long in terms of keeping companies out of the media when we want, when there's a crisis or things like that, or in terms of long, you know, reputation building activities with stakeholders like analysts and, you know, other key people on the investment side and things like that, which you can't really judge just in terms of clicks and pounds and things like that. But anyway, that's for another day. SEO reporting tools for effectiveness of PR. This is something which I would say, because I've worked for a digital marketing business. I've sold SEO services to huge companies globally like GSK and things like that. But you know, PR and communications has such an amazing opportunity to use the SEO impact of the work that you do as another way of demonstrating the value back to the client. So you can show through links that you've placed from third-party sites back to a client's own property the impact that you've had on keyword rankings for particular customer acquisition phrases for customers. And you can use the links to show the referral traffic that you've driven to that client's website using Google Analytics and tools like that. So I think there's a real opportunity for communications professionals in tools like this. And I think, I don't know if Cision uses Moz's domain authority measurement on its coverage yet, but I think a lot of the platforms could and definitely will in the future. I Googled PR meets AI, and this picture of David Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger came up. So I thought that felt as good an image to use as possible on this. I think a lot of people have talked about AI, and a lot of people far cleverer than me have talked about AI. But the one thing two things I would say. One, there is some brilliant work that's been done by the CIPR in the UK on building a capability framework for what PR professionals do each day, and then mapping that to AI technologies that already exist. So if you go to the link which I've put on here, it's really easy, cipr.co.uk/AI. There is a link to that capability framework. And there's loads of really, really interesting tools that can basically take the grunt work out of PR and communications and marketing, so that actually what you're spending your time doing is the high value, highly profitable stuff that clients really benefit from as well. So to summarize the kind of now what, 4 things. So I'd encourage everyone as much as possible to use social media insight as an input into the campaign ideation. So one of the key inputs when you're coming up with a campaign is looking at social media to understand what does your audience think about a particular product, service, company, charity, issue, whatever. use paid promotion of content on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Google, and all the other Pinterest and all the other platforms that exist out there to make sure that your target audiences see your content. Get comfortable using Google Analytics for your reporting, and get comfortable using Microsoft Excel. I'm sure a lot of people in this audience are, but I can definitely attribute the fact, that I sit on the Hotwire board. At least 50% of the reason I do that is because I can use Excel better than anyone else in the agency. And then look at how AI can help you take the grunt work out of the work you do so that you can do more valuable, high-valuable, profitable work for your customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So in summary, we've heard some really interesting case studies. And earlier today we did think about the new maturity map. And I think we have different locations in the world. We have different types of companies. And I think we're hearing people are everyone's thinking about it, as we just heard. The revolution happened. People know about it. But it's how we're using it, how we're interacting with it. If you really think about digital, it's about the touch points or the journey that an audience is taking. It's in our lives. It's not a thing. It's what we're living with kind of every single day. Alison Hughley earlier in the AI workshop mentioned that in the next 3 years, marketing departments will dedicate 22% of their budgets to analytics. So more and more of that is how are we moving our business forward? What insights can we find? And if we know that most of our audiences are spending a good portion of time in some form of digital world, landscape, we heard about Google. It's a question and answer machine. People type anything into Google. You can learn what their words are using, what their questions are, but it's already there, it's happening, and we're gonna leave a lot of money on the table and we're gonna miss out if we don't have a way of understanding what this is. It's really about that, went forward on me, the ecosystem. So from Paul, we're hearing it's really that 24/7 time frame. We really need to compete for people's time. So using data smartly and understanding what's out there and using it efficiently is really going to be helping us. There are no boundaries anymore to this. So we have to be making sure we're thinking through all the data that's out there. Needs to be transparent and utilizing existing ecosystems that we already have. From Jan, it's the end of the era of the generalist. I kind of love that statement. You might have someone who can explain it to everyone, but by having multiple different data sets and people looking at it, it's really going to open everyone's eyes to what's out there and just create better insights. I really like the spillover effect idea as well. I think that's one of the biggest things from digital is it's not one channel, it's many channels, it's many touch points, many behavioral actions that we need to be tracking. From Steffen, right people, right time. It's bringing context and bringing relevance to your data that you can't always just trust on the data itself. It's what you're telling the story with it, how you're bringing it, and it's structuring that data so that you can really use it more effectively. And then finally from Darryl, the hyper-targeting audiences and the PR stack. We hear a lot about marketing stacks, but people kind of forget for PR stack, there's a lot of technologies, tools, APIs out there that should make our lives easier. And knowing how to use them and understanding how our audiences interact with them is very important. It's all about your audience. It's all about the touch points they're making. It's really all about that ecosystem. So with that, let's have some questions. Anyone? They did a really good job, I know, but there has to be something out there. Allison.
I'll wait for the mic. I know Barry will have me otherwise. So a lot of dashboards across all of your myriad slides, and I know one of the points for this session was about how we can move away from just talking about big numbers and actually take that into action. How do you find dashboards are helpful or not in facilitating those conversations? Because I think it goes both ways.
Go ahead.
That's a fabulous question. I think there's almost a couple of angles to the dashboard. So one thing I experience with clients is, in a sense, a lot of the time they want the dashboard not necessarily for insight, but they want it as a communication tool. So they often comms teams want to then be able to talk to the rest of the organization, and they want something that's simple on one page or 2 pages that looks nice, that looks pretty and looks engaging, that can convey what that organization is, what the comms team is then doing. But I think there's probably a lack of insight from there. And then I think when we interact with the comms team themselves, I think increasingly what you're actually doing, and almost pick up on Jan's point about the specialism, we're seeing more and more this kind of collaboration of partnerships where you don't just produce the data and the reports, but you go and talk about it. You talk it through. You do the consultation period. I mean, Paloma does the workshop, before the AMEC Summit, which is really valuable because you get the experts in the room, all with different specialities, and you interpret the data, and you then say, well, this is what we should be doing for the next quarter, for the next year. So it's how it's, I think it's how it's used with that human value add.
To add one thing, I think that's really right. When it was introduced, the dashboard, it was introduced as the one single touch point for the customer. At the moment, it gets fragmented anymore. It's more a workplace where we put things in, and the customer adds his stuff, and it's not just, it's a co-working tool, and it's a production tool for us as well. It's not, as it's been developed, this single point where we provide all the data with dashboards, and of course there's points where it's not really the best thing to present content. We have really international customers that said, oh Jan, I have 20 dashboards and 40 cubes. If there's something really important happening, call me. Please call me. Simply as back then. So it's not, as it's been said for 5 years ago, the all-in-one solution. It's really an aspect point where it's important, but you have to really put it into perspective in the different projects.
Good.
I think I've only just come up with this comparison off the top of my head, so I might run out. It might run out of steam a little bit. But I think CEOs don't drive anywhere, right? They get driven. Okay. So if you think about it, you as the sort of head of comms or CMO or something like that within the organization, you should be in the front seat at the steering wheel with as many dials and information and all the rest of it as you could possibly have in front of you, because you want to know you're not breaking the speed limit, that you've got enough petrol in your car to get you from A to B, that there's no warning lights flashing up everywhere. But the last thing you want to do, I think, is expose your CEO to any of that. And actually, what you'd much rather do is for you to be able to see that and then course correct as you go, and then they just know that they get to the right destination at the end of the journey. How was that?
I think that worked.
Perfect.
You got it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's also, dashboards help you show all the streams that you should be thinking through. So it gives you a nice way to be able to see all those touch points. It's what you do with it, I think, is what's important. Any other questions?
So Jose de Huerva with the World Bank. So we run a lot of advocacy digital marketing campaigns at the bank on different global issues. One of our challenges is that we are touching many channels. We have many collaterals that we use in, videos, infographics, you name it, reports. And I was wondering if you can give us some tips or recommendations on what the producers need to do when implementing the campaign so that we can facilitate the reporting and the monitoring of it. We spend a lot of time educating people inside the institution about the correct use of CIDs and tracking codes. But is there anything else we should be keeping in mind so that it's easy for us to monitor in a holistic way how the campaign has performed?
Great question.
I think that's a really important question because, in a sense, that speaks to the fact that the danger of having silos. So if you have different marketing channels doing their own thing and measuring themselves in different ways, but actually, ultimately, it might well be the same end audience that they target, then you could have all sorts of problems. One, you don't have any idea about what's actually going on in total. But secondly, it's really dangerous for the audience because then they get mixed messages from all these different channels. So I think it speaks to the importance of being able to have an integrated, not only plan and activity, but then you can actually understand how they're doing it. And I think one of the things that we often underplay is audiences. So, and one of the things, so when we did the maturity mapper stuff earlier on, although a lot of people are looking at social media in terms of audience research purposes, there's often a lack of using market research, actually surveying your audience or talking to your audience. And I think that's fundamental, because if you can layer that on top of the output metrics across all the channels, you don't really know the effect that you're then having on the audience. So I think it is about multiple data sources, but ultimately it's then trying to triangulate that against that end audience.
I think showing them the audience profile makes them understand how many touch points or interests they have, which usually opens their eyes to, I didn't think about that, and why the codes are important, why they need to be thinking about other things as well. Yes? Any other questions? I have one more before I get yelled at, if anybody has one. No? Then I would like to say we have literally a few words each before Barry yells at me. But we're about to leave this room. We just spent some time talking about the digital revolution. What's the most important thing that they should walk away with if they want to impact change when they leave here? Sorry.
Wow, that's a big one. I think I want to pick up Steel Jan's point. Specialism. So I don't think you need to do it all yourself. The whole point of conferences like this is to share experience and to see that we all have different specialisms and different things. Concentrate on what you are good at. If you're good PR, it's often about good storytelling. Don't worry too much about the technical side of it, because then you can always get that technical support. Best programs involve partnerships. So then it's about understanding the right mix of skills within teams, and then you'll go far.
That's great.
So then I'm going to steal your point. I think it's really important to say that digitalization is not something that you can decide if you want to go with it or not go along. We're in the middle of it. You have to get over it and get on with it. Just keep on going. And it's important for companies and that it's not mainly a technical point. I think it's a cultural point, how you want to co-work together and stuff, and how you want to share information and stuff. It's not really about technique and stuff. It's how you want to work and live together. That's the main point, and not something about technique.
I would say uniform the data as much as possible. Use different techniques to filter and code it and enrich it, and then present it to the client in a way that is actionable and understandable for him.
I think that whether you work in-house or whether you work for a client in one way or another, it's vitally important to walk down the corridor and talk to as many people as you possibly can and try to create shared value together. So it's give to get. So it's like, I can share this data with you, can you share that data with me? So that hopefully together you can create as rich and informed an understanding of how you've generated the results that you have for the business through every aspect of marketing and communications.
That's great. Very good. Put you on the spot. That was great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.